So this week on Halo, we're gonna talk about our feelings and our epic sci-fi action series, which is proving to have a lot less action than I initially thought it would. Series, Episode 4, Homecoming, is brought to us by director Raul Renee and stars Pablo Schreiber, Natasha McElhone, and Olive Gray. John 117 and Halsey return to his home planet in order to discover the other part to the ancient artifact, and Quan returns to Madrigal with hopes of rekindling the Resistance. So if you didn't see it in the title, this is a spoiler review of Halo the Series, Episode 4, Homecoming. So let's jump right into this thing. Oh, Halo, 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 Halo. I have been with you. I've been on this ride. I have defended you against the naysayers, and I've been okay with the creative license you've taken with the universe. But this episode right here, you have made some stumbles. So we pick up where the last episode left off. Halsey and John are headed off to his original homeworld due to him having these visions of this other part of the artifact from his childhood, and it's buried somewhere on the planet. So they head there looking for it, and while there, they find his childhood home. He walks around in there and kind of has some flashbacks and visions, and we get a little bit more insight into John when he was a child. We also learn that as a child, John found this unnaturally formed cave that has something in it. We're assuming this larger part of the artifact. And John also sees in his memories in his childhood home that Halsey had visited him before his parents' death. Up to this point, he was under the impression that she didn't come into the picture until after his parents had died and he had gone to an orphanage. But this memory is telling him that she was there first, which, if you're a fan of the universe, we know that that's true, but she tells him, no, that's because of trauma, memories get mixed up. I wasn't really there, you're just kind of getting things a bit mixed up, it's okay. But you can tell Chief is kind of suspect of it all. They head off to this cave, they go in, they find the larger artifact that the smaller artifact goes in, and right before they go to inspect it, the episode ends. Now there is more to the episode. We've also got Quan, she's with Soren, she has now arrived on Madrigal. She's going and looking for the remains of the Resistance that her father ran. She finds out that everybody's pretty much pussied out and the Resistance is not a thing anymore. She goes and finds her aunt, who apparently has all the family money, and then she finds out that this aunt doesn't have any money anymore because her father spent it all on the Resistance. And apparently the Resistance was not this big noble thing that she thought it was. She thought all these people were joining in on it because they wanted to fight for the freedom of the planet, but no, they were in on it because her dad was pumping money into it, because as soon as the money was gone, the people started drying up too. Due to their ship getting confiscated now, Quan and Soren have to travel 200 miles to another city so that they can get on a transport to get off the planet. While all this is going on, back on Reach at the UNSC, Spartan Kai has decided to remove her emotion suppressing pellet from her back like the Chief did last episode for reasons. Now that she sees the world in a bit of a different light and has a bit of emotion about her, she starts to help Miranda Keyes in her quest to trying to figure out this artifact, while her mom, Dr. Halsey, is away with the Chief. And that is about all we get in this episode. Now if you hadn't guessed by my initial tone in this review, I didn't love this episode. I didn't hate it either, but I certainly didn't love it. Much like episode 2, this was a much slower episode, and there was very little action in it. Not as little as in episode 2, but not a whole lot either. But you know, I'm okay with that. I don't mind having an episode that isn't action-based and focuses more on the story if you're giving me some good story, but that is the biggest problem with this episode. Are there important things that we learn here? Sure there are. Is there an hour's worth of important things we learn here? Abso-fucking-lutely not. I can't go as far as to say this episode is boring, but holy fuck, it is drawn out, and it did teeter on losing my attention a couple of times. Oh my god, they spend so much time on all this stuff that you just don't need. Yeah, the stuff with Chief and the memories and leading them to this other artifact, you need that. That's important, but they take so fucking long to get there. And it's just not needed. You could have gotten the same amount of information and the same tone and everything. You could have gotten everything that you got within this story in this episode in a much shorter amount of time. The stuff with Miranda Keyes and Spartan Kai is probably the most interesting part of the episode, and it's really just them sitting around talking about the Covenant language. And the stuff with Quan in this episode is pretty much just a waste of fucking time. This entire episode with Quan in it is trying to get her to this city that they are driving driving to in the end of the episode. They take the whole fucking episode to get her there. They jump through all these hoops that are just unneeded. I don't mind the fact that these events took place, but we didn't necessarily need to see each and every one of them in such detail. This episode legit could have been half as long as it was. And I don't think we would have lost anything had they shortened it down to 30 minutes. But the icing on the cake is that by the time we get to the end of this episode, our characters really aren't in any kind of a different place than they were in the beginning. Nothing has really changed for anyone. This episode was just a waste of fucking time all around. There was just no need for it. I mean, the stuff that transpired here could have been cleared up in like 60 seconds of exposition, like for the whole fucking thing. Now, that being said, I didn't like hate the episode. It did still have that good quality that the show has shown up to this point. The effects, the production values, the performances, hell, even the story. I am interested to see what happens with these characters. I just wasn't interested in seeing this much fine detail for some things that just don't really matter a fuck. We were expecting the Chief and Halsey to find whatever was on this planet they went to in this episode. We weren't necessarily expecting them to find it at the very end of the episode and just leave us hanging once again. And this brings me to Kai and her decision to take out the emotion suppressing pellet. I don't really understand why she did this. I do like that it did lead to the most entertaining parts of this episode, but I don't understand why this character would have made this decision. She is a Spartan. Those emotions are suppressed. She's almost robotic in accepting her order. One of her orders is don't fuck with that thing back there. We understand why the Chief did it. He's been affected by this artifact. It made him see things. It's changed his perspective. That allowed him to buck the system, to push back some, and that included when he took that out last episode. But Kai has not been affected by this. I suppose you could maybe say it's because she saw that the Chief did it. She saw what's going on with the Chief, and she's trying to follow in his footsteps because he is their leader. And we have seen that the Spartans in this group will put one another before anyone else, including the UNSC. But I feel like this would be an extremely difficult decision for a Spartan to make, especially one that hadn't been affected by something on the outside like the artifact. And it seems like she just kind of made this decision in an afternoon or something. Now that being said, as I mentioned a moment ago, it does lead to the most entertaining parts of the show. Her interactions with Miranda Keyes, aka Olive Gray, are the best parts of this episode. We get to see a person who is for the first time in her life being able to show emotion. For the first time in her life actually feeling the emotions and dealing with them. And while we can tell she is trying to hold it back a bit, she's not really doing a very good job here. She's not like bawling her eyes out or anything, but she is getting excited repeatedly throughout the episode. When Master Chief did this last episode, we could tell that he was feeling things. He went to that concert. You could see it by the subtle changes in his face. He was feeling it, but he's the Master Chief. He was remaining stoic. He knew that he had to keep up this facade. And even in this episode, he finds out some stuff that's really big about his childhood that definitely affects him mentally, but he doesn't really let on that much. He may be feeling this and all kinds of emotions going on in the inside, but we on the outside don't know it because he's keeping it locked up inside, because he knows that nobody's supposed to know that he removed that pellet from his back. But Kai just busts up in with like a new hairdo, kind of smiling and laughing and making jokes and shit. I mean, really, the Chief, shit happens and he's just like stone cold badass with a slight wiggle in his eye. But Kai just gives no fuck. She busts up in that piece like, hey girl, what's up? Oh, this? Oh no, this hair right here? No, girl, I just put that together just now. This is nothing. I didn't spend no time on this at all. You know what I'm talking about. Ooh, is that a needler? You know that's my favorite. Ooh. Needle, 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 needle. I like how the needles come out and penetrate things. You know what I'm talking about, girl, right? Ooh, yeah. I mean, seriously, she's just like not holding anything back, and even Miranda kind of notices it. And towards the end of the episode, she like real diplomatically tells her, look, this way you're acting right here, if my mom gets back, if she sees you acting like this, you're just gonna fucking disappear. I would start to reel that shit in. And I liked that part of the episode. While yeah, this character was showing more emotion than I think that she would have. She's a tactician. The Spartans are not dumb. I would think she would try and keep it to herself a bit more. Didn't change the fact that it was still more entertaining than some of the other stuff that was going on in the episode. Before I get out of here, I want to talk about Dr. Halsey real quick and what their end game is with her. Because they could do some really cool stuff with this character, much like the canon universe did, or they could take it down a really cliched black and white route. Up to this point in this show, we have seen that Dr. Halsey is an extremely manipulative person, and that is her personality in the canon as well. Halsey is willing to do whatever she has to do, no matter how many people get hurt, die, or are maimed. For the greater good is kind of of her mantra, and she lives by that. She's done some truly fucked up things within the Halo universe, and we're starting to see that within this universe as well, she's also done some really fucked up things. But she's also created some fantastic inventions, and she's helped them win the war. So it's kind of like a means to an end. When are the means no longer justified to get to the end? And that's a big part of Dr. Halsey within the original Halo universe. I am curious as if they're going to continue that within this show, and I hope they really do. I hope they don't just go down this route saying she's just a mean, evil, manipulative woman and that's it. Because the whole conflict about, yes, she is bad, she's done some terrible things, but she has also saved a lot of lives. She has almost put an end to this war. In fact, you kind of could say that she did because she created the Spartans, and John, who is a Spartan, ended the war. So there's this conflict about, you know, yes, she's bad, but she has produced some really great things. Sometimes when we are at war, we have to employ terrible people to do terrible things. That's just what it is. It's not something we like to think about, but war's not nice, and that's just how it is. And that's one of the things that really made this character interesting within the original lore. I just hope they don't take that away here. And I do have hope for that because in the end of the episode, we hear a bit of a monologue from Miranda, and she does reference this a bit. We get a little bit of her talking about how, you know, she's done some really bad things, but some good things have come of it. But she is kind of an unstoppable force. No matter what it is that she sets her mind to, she will never stop. And while that shows dedication, she will not stop regardless of what and who get in her way. Guys, I didn't hate this episode, but it is definitely my least favorite up to this point. Much like all the episodes that came before it, it looks great, it has great production values, the performances are good, the overarching story is interesting. I want to know what happens next. But unlike those episodes, this episode is just slow as hell, and I could deal with that if we were getting some story, but we don't get shit. Our characters do not mature at all during this episode. I mean, Chief does a little bit, and also Spartan Kai does, but not an hour's worth of TV show. The episode had some entertaining moments, but it all felt a bit empty because there wasn't much meaning to what was going on in this episode. You may remember me talking about episode 2, saying that it was a bit slower, a bit more slow than I would have liked. We would have liked a little bit of action in that one, and this episode does have more action than that one. And I also mentioned that, you know, if episode 3 comes out and it's just a banger, it'll kind of make up for this. When you're binging it, it'll be a moot point. This will be that in-between episode because it gave us a lot of information we needed to move the characters places that we needed them to go. But you can't really say that about this episode because our characters just don't move forward at all. They're just kind of here in the same place they were from the beginning. Truly, when this show, all 8 or 9 or whatever episodes of this show are finally out, I feel like you could probably cut this episode out and you're not really gonna miss much. I really hope that they pick the pace back up next week because if it continues down this road, this show is headed towards a bad place and it's headed there quick. So there it is, guys, my review of Halo, the series, episode 4, Homecoming. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below. Become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits to go along with it, like these guys, and possibly join my top tier and become a bad motherfucker like my man Dragon Khan and Marge G. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, High Charity.
Silver team, on me.
So for you purists out there who are still kind of bent out of shape about the whole Master Chief helmet thing, you'll be happy to hear that for the majority of this episode, he does keep the helmet on. I mean, he takes it off a good bit too, but I'd have to say screen time wise, he has it on more than he doesn't. So if you're a fan of the Master Chief not taking his helmet off, hey, progress. It's a move in the right direction, right? I mean, yeah, the episode kind of nosedives narratively and execution wise, but hey, keeps his helmet on a lot.